I forgot to hit record. So I was saying, what is the name of this element? It's CO -2. I'm only going to give you this portion on the test. These are all the 8 oxyanions. So when you have an element with oxygen, and it's an ion, it's called an oxyanion. So an oxyanion is when an ion gets oxygen. So it's when an ion has oxygen attached to it. So to figure out its name, you need to consult the table. So we see carbon has normally 3 oxygens. And this is the 8 version, so this is carbon. So it'd be carbon-8. How many oxygens do we start with? 1. So how many do we end up removing? We remove 2. So remember, when you remove 1, it ends with 8, or 8 becomes 8. When you remove 2, you put hypo and 8. And if you add 1, it becomes per 8. So we removed 2, so we're going to need to change this to an 8 and add the word hypo in front of it.
So if you add 1,
then that would be CO4 -2. So this is the carbon-8, so we're adding 1. So we need to we're going to need to add the word per to the front of the 8.
So if we add a oxygen to it, it becomes percarbonate and take it away.
Yes, so the standard one, CO3, is carbonate. If we remove 1 oxygen, it's carbonate. If we remove 2, it's hypocarbonate. And if we add 1, it's percarbonate. Tomorrow.
I can't do it. I'm on the based off of the different things you can use. Oh man, no, the season. You know, like
So SO2 -2. What would this one be called?
Surfer it'd be an 8, won't it? Hypo.
This would be hypo sulfite.
So if it has 2 of them, it's hypo.
Nope. Again, you consult the table and look at what the 8 version is. So we have sulfur. So you look at the table, and we see SO4 -4 is sulfate. So the 8 version is sulfate. And then how do we go to this one? Well, we remove 2 oxygens. That means we need to add both hypo and ite to the ending. So that becomes hypo sulfite. What is the name of this? Someone besides Brent.
Remember what?
What is the name of this one?
Nitrite.
So looking at the table, we see right here NO3. So NO3 -1 is nitrate. And the 3 and the 2, so we removed 1 oxygen. So we're just going to change the ending to an ite. So this would be nitrite.
Dude, Thomas is...
Open the door.
I don't have coffee. When you said 8, I was like, what do you
What about this one? What's its name?
Perchlorate.
Perchlorate. So again, looking at the table, we see ClO3. So ClO3 -1 is the 8 version, or 8. We need to add an oxygen, which means we need to add the word per. So when you add one oxygen to the formula, that means you add per to the name. What about this one? It's chromate. There's no change. I didn't add any additional oxygens or remove any oxygens, so this is the 8 version.
Why did chromate up there?
Because chromate, if you look at your periodic table, is a transition element. So here are all these. The chromate is way over here. Chromium. Because it's one of the common oxy ions. Usually all the oxy ions are together, but chromate is a very common one too. How do you tell if an element, or if a compound is ionic or not ionic? Yes. It's ionic if the difference in electronegativity is greater than 1.7. So that is these values at the bottom that you will use. So another way is if they have, this is the most precise way. This determines if two bonds are ionic. Usually, ionic compounds are a metal with nonmetal. So oxygen likes to make ionic compounds.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would ionic compounds only be a non-metal metal? Is there exception?
Yes. What are they doing out there?
Moving something. I'm just maybe sticking up on
Yes. Mhm. Alright, so which of the following does oxygen want to make an ionic bond with? Phosphorus, iodine, potassium, or tin?
The one with the equal charge, right? Yeah. Hang on. I don't know.
This should be very obvious. You just look and know.
Potassium, yes.
So potassium is way on the left-hand side. You used it enough to know that somewhere on the left. And oxygen is way on the right. The rest of them are all very close to oxygen. We have tin, we have phosphorus, we have iodine. These like to make negative ions, and remember an ion has exactly two parts. What does it have? An ion has exactly two parts always. Where are they?
Left and right.
And where is the left and the right called? A cation and an anion. The cation is what? What is a cation? So it's a positive ion. And an anion is what? So an ion, when I said ion, I meant an ionic compound. That's exactly two parts, my bad. It has a positive ion, and an anion will be the negative ion. And when writing the name, and formula, we always put cations first. So formulas always begin with the cation in front and the anion afterwards. So it's NaCl, not ClNa. And we call this sodium, not sodium chlorine, but sodium chloride. We changed the name to IDE. So it's sodium chloride, not sodium chlorine. So there will be several questions that would ask is this an ionic compound? So calcium has a 1.0, chlorine has a 3.0. The difference in En is thus 2. 2 is greater than 1.7, so it is ionic.
So that 2 doesn't mean nothing?
It does mean something.
No,
The larger the number, the more ionic it is.
yeah.
Oh yeah, the subscript, and this is called a subscript. No. The reason why is we have a calcium bonded with a chlorine and another chlorine, and the difference of this bond right here is 2.0. The difference of this is 2.0 because we're looking at individual bonds. And both of these bonds are thus ionic. And as long as it has one ionic bond, the whole compound is considered ionic. What about and what would be the name of this? Say that again. Calcium chloride. Again, you change the name to ID. Yes, so I'll write that. IDE for a single element. For example, oxygen becomes oxide, or chloride. So this would be for oxygen. This would be for Cl. Nitride would be for N. 8 is whenever you have an oxygen, so ClO3 would be chlorate. NO3 would be nitrate. And then, so 8 is when you have an element with oxygen. And then the ite also. So if you see 8 and ite, it means that you have an element with oxygen. If you see ide, that just means it's a single element. So, what are the formulas for each of these? Lift your head up, Michael, and put your mask on. So Ca has a 2 plus or a plus 2 charge. N, so IDE just means it's N, and it has a negative 3 charge. So the 3 is going to come over here to the calcium. This is your crisscross. The 2 is going to go to your, and you put that down. The 2 is going to come over here. So it is Ca3N2. That's calcium nitride. So calcium has a plus 2 charge. Nitrate. What is nitrate? So it's just NO3 negative 1. So what would its formula be? For 2, we need 2 nitrates to counteract the plus 2. The hypo and the ite means remove 1 oxygen for each of these. So this would be NO negative 1. Hypo means move an oxygen, ite means remove another one. And this is Ca plus 2. So its formula will be Ca and O2. We need 2 of these to counteract the +2 charge here. How many valence electrons does... I think we'll have Kahoot tomorrow, and then the test will be Thursday. That sounds better, doesn't it? How many valence electrons does nitrogen have? Five.
Oh.
Does it want to... So, remember, what would be the Lewis dot notation for this? So remember, Lewis dot draws all the valence electrons spread out. So it either wants to gain 3, I'll make the dots bigger so you can see where it gained it. So it wants to gain 3 and become -3. Or it wants to lose 5 and become +5. Which does it actually do? It gains 3 and becomes in -3. That's where the 3 comes from, is the fact that it has 5 valence, and it either wants to gain 3, and at the very end, it has how many in total? It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is known as the octet rule. Atoms want to be like noble gases and have 8 valence electrons. It can do this with the exception of hydrogen and helium. Or I should say, with the exception of first energy level only holding 2. So if we draw the Bohr model, nitrogen has a total of 7. So it has 1, 2. So it's missing 3 right here. It can either remove this outer shell, making its next shell full, and the inner one's full at 2, or it can gain 3. And nitrogen gains 3 to become full. Which of these has a higher melting point? Uh, no, that's about it. Um, let's do. Which of these has a higher melting point? Why? Mm-mm. Which of these is ionic? So is this ionic? Stay awake, Michael. Yeah, so that's 1.0. That is 3.0. That is a difference of En equal to 2.0. So this would be ionic. Well, this one, phosphorus has 2.1. Oxygen is 3.5. That's a difference of 1.4. So not ionic. This has a melting point of 74.84 degrees Fahrenheit or 23.8 degrees Celsius. So it would almost be molten right now in this room. While this has a melting point of 1,422 degrees Fahrenheit or 772 degrees Celsius. Ionic compounds usually have very high melting points. So what charge do you think selenium will most likely have? What would be the charge of a selenium ion? No. Minus 2, so it forms Se negative 2. So usually everything in the oxygen group is -2. What about radon? A radium, I mean. Radium ion.
It isn't charging you.
No. Not radium, not radon. Radon. The RA one. So it's in group 2. So it'd be Ra+2. We have a compound, Ca3X2. Compound. So what charge must the X have? So calcium has a +2 charge. And there are 3 of them. So 3 times +2 gives us a +6. To counteract the +6, so this is for the cation, the left side, the anion side must have a -6. And we have 2 times X. So 2 times what gives you -6? -3. Another way of looking at it is we have Ca with something right here, and then we have X with something right here, and it makes Ca3X2. You should already know that the first element is positive, and the right element is negative. When doing crisscross backwards, the 2 comes up here, and the 3 comes up here. But either way you look at it, it's -3. How many valence electrons does chlorine have? So it's in group 7 is with the halogens. The halogens. So any halogen would have 7 valence electrons. What would be its charge? What would be its ionic charge? Michael? What would it be, Michael?
Or has one factor that's an electron. It needs 1 to be full.
So what would be its charge?
The plus 1.
No.
Be a charge.
It'd be -1.
-1.
So it wants to
Lose 1?
gain 1 electron.
You can't just ask me a question and I might get caught up with sleep.
You shouldn't be sleeping.
Right.
How many electrons does boron want to gain or lose? So does it want to lose 3, gain 3, lose 5, or gain 5? So lose how many? Boron has 3 valence electrons. And you're either trying to go to 0 or you're trying to go to 8. To go from 3 to 0, that would mean lose 3. To go from 3 to 8, that means you gain 5. And you always choose the lower number. Lose 3. And when you lose 3 electrons, that means you get a plus 3 charge. So boron likes to form plus 3 ions. So sulfur has how many valence electrons? So it has 6. Does it want to lose 6, gain 6, lose 2, gain 2? So what does it want to do? Yeah. Thomas, stay awake. What are you doing, Michael? Stop messing with math. Put that back. So again, we're starting with 6, and you want to try to go to 0 or 8. When you go from 6 to 0, what are you doing? You're losing 6. And going from 6 to 8, that means you do that by gaining 2. You choose the lower number. So you want to gain 2. Gaining 2 negative charges would mean you'd have a negative 2 charge. So sulfur likes to become sulfur negative 2, or sulfide. What is the charge of NaCl? Zero. Compounds have no charge. The charges cancel each other out. No. Again, a square, if you round it, is no longer a square.
No, it is not. You said everything has exceptions.
A round square is no longer a square. If you stretch the square, it's no longer a square. It's a rectangle. Yes?
When you charge your Apple iPhone, is it what Apple do?
Do metals gain or lose electrons?
Yeah.
Usually. Do metals usually gain or lose electrons?
They get some gains.
They lose electrons. What about non-metals?
Oh, they definitely.
So think about oxygen. They like to gain.
No, Michael.
Why does sodium stay attached to chlorine? Why doesn't sodium just float away?
Because of chemically attached to each other.
What is a chemical bond, in other words? Chemical ionic bond.
Positive.
So that's because positive charges are attracted to negative charges. So the sodium plus is pulled toward the Cl negative, and vice versa. What is an ionic bond? It's when electrons are fully transferred to another atom. They are not shared.
So basically a number one.
No. Alright, we'll do Kahoot tomorrow and any additional review.
Definitely.